This week on State of Texas In Depth, we are meeting one of the newest faces likely at the legislature next year. Former Austin ISD Board of Trustee President Gina Hinojosa beat out 6 opponents to win the Democratic primary for House District 49. That includes Austin and the University of Texas. She sat down with State of Texas In Depth host Josh Hinkle to talk about what she hopes to accomplish at the Capitol. They start off talking about the challenge of running in a partisan race.
You wouldn't do it again. It's like childbirth. You wouldn't do it again if you remembered how painful it was. And it does take a toll on one's personal life. But what's wonderful about it is getting out into Austin and meeting with all the people in this community who care so passionately about it and passionately about different issues. It's why I originally fell in love with this city when I came here in the 90s in college. And so to reconnect with that was very nice.
Obviously you have a platform, but as you were out there talking to the people, did any specific topics or issues rise to the level where you thought, this is something I would want to tackle in the legislature?
Certainly campus carry was a big issue in this community, in this election. I spent a lot of time at the campus of UT, and people constantly came up to me and asked, what are we going to do? In fact, on election day, I had a professor come up to me and he asked, Gina, if somebody comes into my classroom, if a student comes in with a gun, what do I do? And when professors don't feel like they have control over their classrooms and the safety of their class, it's a real problem. So that, I think, emerged as one of the big issues in this campaign.
Where do you side with that issue?
Well, definitely think we need to try to at least pass into law an opt-out for public universities. I don't think our community, and I don't think the university community really thought this was going to happen. It's so outlandish to think we would have guns on campus. I don't think people thought it would come to that. And so I don't think we were an organized presence at the Capitol as a result. And so certainly for next session, we need to make sure that our voices are heard. It gives me some hope that I have seen that 3/4 of Texans support universal background checks. So I think Texans are generally reasonable about gun policy, but the legislature is not hearing from us on this.
Are you to the point where you would start thinking about how to craft legislation for a topic like that?
Well, I believe that there had been an amendment to the campus carry bill that would have allowed for an opt-out provision for public universities. It's my understanding. But again, nothing happens without political will. And so we definitely need to make sure that Texans are organized and are vocal on opposition to this. I think it's very telling that all the private universities have opted out of campus carry. And I think it is indicative of how it just doesn't make sense that we would have guns on our campuses and that across the board in this state, people agree.
So with your history on the AISD Board of Trustees, what are you going to bring from that to the Capitol?
Well, definitely education will be a big issue next legislative session. We are awaiting a decision on state finance, on the state finance system that had been declared unconstitutional or has been declared unconstitutional. And so we're waiting a ruling from the Texas Supreme Court about whether that stands. Regardless of whether or not that stands, we have big issues when it comes to state finance, and most everybody knows it. So it is a big issue here in Austin. We carry the brunt of the investment in public education in the state because the state will not invest general revenue into public education. And so property taxpayers in Austin spend about almost $1,000 per home on public education for the rest of the state. And so that really is hurting our community. And while certainly under Robin Hood we would need to pay our fair share, we are at a point where the state is not paying its fair share, and so we're having to bear the burden of that. So that's a big issue for our community and for the state. Also, there will be a push for vouchers next session, and That is a scheme that does take money away from our public schools. And our public schools are desperate for the funds that we need to provide adequate education for our students. And so we need to oppose that, and we need to be able to educate Texans and to educate the legislature about what that really does to our public schools and about the great choices that currently do exist within our public schools for families.
Gina Hinojosa does not face a Republican opponent in the general election. However, Libertarian Rick Perkins is running, so one more vote in November will determine who will be the next representative for House District 49. And by the way, this race opened up because longtime Representative Elliot Neistat decided to not seek re-election. You can see our interview with Neistat in this story on KXAN.com. And remember, we take a deeper look into state politics and their impact on you every week here on State of Texas In Depth. It is always in the 8:30 half hour right before NBC's Meet the Press.